If you want to paint the wheels of your car, whether it be to repair damage or scratches or to just simply change the look of your vehicle, I'm going to show you how to do so in a very fast, inexpensive, and easy way. Please note that this is by no means going to come out as a professional job. If you really want the very best for your wheels, simply go ahead and get them powder coated. This is simply a way to do it in a very cheap, roughly $50 expense, and a very fast, within 24 hours time frame and budget. So to get started, what you're going to need is something to get the wheels off of your car. I have a jack, 4 jack stands. You're going to want 4 rather than 2. That way we can do all 4 wheels at the same time. A tire iron to take the lug nuts off of your car, and ideally a torque wrench for when we put the wheels back on. So we're going to start out by jacking the car up, taking the wheels off, and then we'll go ahead and get into the process of painting them. In this tutorial, I'm going to be painting these NK PF01 wheels that I have here on my NC Miata. They're currently black and rather scratched up. I'm going to be painting them silver to closely match the car. I made a version of this video a couple years back showing how to do this process, and it seemed to have helped a lot of people. However, since then, I've improved the process. I've done this numerous times over and definitely have more focus on the preparation side of the job now. So this is going to be the new and improved process that's going to get you better results. So the first thing that we're going to do is jack up the car. You can do one axle at a time. I usually start with the front and then do the rear. So I'm jacking up the front axle here, being sure to use whatever the factory specified jack points for your car are. In my case, it's just the pinch welds down each side and then securely setting it onto a jack stand. Did the same on the other side, and now get your lug wrench out and remove the wheels. Now with the front wheels off, we can then lift up the rear axle of the vehicle. In this case, I'm going to be jacking it up from each side and placing it securely on a jack stand. Once this is done, go ahead and remove each of the rear wheels the exact same way. So now with the car on jack stands and using the jack as even a 5th point of protection, we're going to take the wheels aside and wash them. You're just going to use regular car wash soap and regular hose water like you would wash them normally if you were washing your car. This is just to get the main bit of dirt and grime off of the wheels so that when we go ahead and go to sand them and do actual preparation, we're not fighting with dirt the entire time, and we actually get a nice smooth surface that we can then do a much better cleaning of before we go ahead and paint. Start this off by rinsing down all of your wheels as thoroughly as possible. Then apply some sort of soap to them. You can do this with a foam gun or just by hand. The most important step though is going to be to actually scrub them down. You're going to want to make sure that you get every little crack and crevice as well as the inside of the wheel. This is going to get all the dirt out of the way so we have a nice smooth surface to work with for preparation. Then rinse away all of the dirt that we've just agitated by scrubbing each of the wheels down. And lastly, let each of the wheels dry. You can do this with some kind of blow dryer or just let them sit until they're fully dry. Once this is done, we're ready to move on to the most important step of the whole process, which is the preparation for painting. So while we're waiting for the wheels to dry, I'm going to go over everything you'll need to prep and paint your wheels. There's going to be a few household items that won't be mentioned here, such as rubbing alcohol, that might come up throughout the video, but they'll mostly be things that I would imagine most households actually have on hand. The things that you're really going to want to get though are the sanding blocks. I prefer this to sandpaper just because it's a little bit easier on your hands, it's easier to use, and it doesn't leave your hands feeling all worn out and grimy by the time you're done. You're going to want 4 different grits, and I actually got sent the wrong ones, so don't pay attention to what they say. What you're going to want is a 220 grit, that's correct. This is for getting the big indentations, big scratches, big imperfections out of the wheel face. Then you're going to want a 400 grit. This is still for doing a lot of major sanding and really grinding down the surface quite a bit, but still nothing super fine. Then you're going to want a 1000 grit and 2000 grit. Those are going to be what give us the butter smooth finish that we're eventually going to be able to paint over. Now for the really important stuff, this is everything we're going to be needing to paint the wheels. The first is the Duplicolor Filler Primer. This is great for filling any scratches, indentations, or just general chips that you might have on your wheels. Then we need the wheel paint. All of this here is linked in the description. It's all off of Amazon as well. So if you want to use these specific products, feel free to check out the links there. There's many different colors of this specific wheel paint that you can get. I'm going with silver for what I'm looking for out of this project. And then most importantly is our wheel gloss clear coat. This is going to protect that paint job that we put on there, as well as just make the wheels look a lot more shiny. Another honorable mention is hub centric rings. Most wheels do have them. Mine don't, so this is a good opportunity to put them on. A few other major things that aren't pictured here that you're going to want are masking tape for the valve stems, as well as either a deck of cards or some index cards. That's going to be what we use to cover off the tire as we go to actually paint the face of the wheel. At this point, if you don't want to paint the center caps of your wheels, which I personally recommend, this would be the time to remove them, and we'll put them back in once we're finished. Any blunt object just with a rag on the top will work if you just simply knock them out of the back. Break out the 220 grit sanding block, and you're going to want to work your way all the way around the wheel. This way you make sure not to miss any spots, but sand every single surface on the wheel, making sure that you leave absolutely nothing behind. These steps of sanding will do more for your result than anything else. Also make sure that we sand the barrel of the wheel, being careful not to knock or disturb any of the weights that are on there for the balancing of the wheel. When you're done, it should look like a difference of this. The first wheel hasn't been sanded, the second has. You can clearly see that every single surface there has been disturbed, and I've left nothing at all behind. This is what's going to give us a nice uniform finish. I then like to just take a wet paper towel and wipe away all of the dust that we've just knocked up, so that on the next round of sanding, we're not rubbing that into the surface and creating any deep scratches. Just another side note, a pair of gloves of any kind will make your life a lot better throughout this entire process. The second round of sanding is going to be a 400 grit wet sand. Now, if you're not familiar with wet sanding, you just get a bowl of water like you see here, dip your sanding sponge into the water, sand a small bit of the surface, and then once it starts to dry out, dip it back in the water to get it wet again, and continue this process for the entire surface of the wheel. Wet sanding will give us a bit of a smoother finish now that we're moving up in the grit, and it will carry away any of the dust that comes up along the way. Now, using a dry paper towel, once you're done with the wet sanding, just go around and wipe away all the excess dust and any of the moisture that's left on the wheel. The final stage of sanding is going to be to go over the entire wheel with 1000 grit as well as 2000 grit. At this point, you don't have to do the barrel for these finer grits. You can if you want to. I personally don't think it's necessary, but once you're done with the 2000 grit, you should end up with a butter smooth finish that looks like it's completely paint ready. Definitely take your finger, feel over it, make sure everything feels smooth. Take a look at all the different surfaces, make sure you've gotten everything evenly and you haven't missed any spots. With all the sanding completed, we're going to wash the wheels one more time using the exact same process that we did earlier in the video. This is going to get any debris that we've brought up out of the way, as we're now getting ready to actually paint the wheels. Once everything's dried off, we're then going to take some rubbing alcohol on a microfiber cloth and wipe down everywhere that is going to receive paint. This is to get all and any contaminants off of the surface and ensure a smooth and proper finish. Congratulations, we're now done with the hardest part of prep work, and now we get to the fun of painting. Find yourself a place with as little wind as possible to actually paint, and place everything down onto some sheets of cardboard. Then take either your index cards or your playing cards and place them around the edge of the wheel in between the rim and the tire. The index cards will cover more space, but the playing cards are significantly more stiff if you're dealing with any substantial amount of wind. This is going to be what keeps any paint from getting onto our tires. Then with some painter's tape, mask off the valve stems. Get out the filler primer and do 3 light coats on each of the wheels with about 20 to 30 minutes of wait time in between to let it dry. I say do light because if you go heavy, you're going to get drips and runs, which is going to undo all of the tedious prep work that we've just done. You want to hold the can about 6 to 8 inches away from the face of the wheel and move back and forth in non-continuous spraying motions. If you press and hold, that will also contribute to getting drips, but if you're continuously stopping as you pass the wheel back and forth, and you do it in this kind of layered way, you're going to get a much more uniform finish. Also, as we spray throughout the remainder of the process, make sure that you're changing which angle you're facing the wheel from. I usually like to just work around it in a circle to make sure you're hitting it from every angle and not leaving any spots missing. This is what I'm working with after I finished each of the coats of primer. You should see a nice smooth finish that is even across each of the wheels. If it's not, make sure you correct that here before moving on to paint. With the primer done, move on to paint. Here I do 4 light coats of paint. I always do light coats, it's just my personal preference, simply to avoid any kind of drips. But I do 4 light coats still to be thorough and make sure I'm getting full coverage of each of the wheels. It's the exact same process as you did with the primer. The only difference is I would be sure to give these coats a full 30 minutes to dry in between, just to make sure that we're not disturbing the finish at all. And you should really start to see your results come together at this point if you did all of the prep work correctly. These are my results after the 4th coat of paint, and everything was starting to come together and look quite nice. Also note that you don't have to actually flip the wheel over and paint the backside of it to cover the barrel. That'll naturally happen as the spray goes down into the wheel from above. You can do it if you want, but I personally don't think it's worth the risk of putting the wheel on its face and screwing up everything that we've done. Finish things off with 2 to 3 light coats of the clear coat. This is going to give us that hard outer shell, so definitely don't skip this step. I say 2 to 3 because it kind of depends on how glossy you want your final finish to look, but this is going to give us that nice hard enamel on the outer edge, so I would give it about 30 to 40 minutes between coats to dry to let this actually harden. Once things have dried up a decent amount, you can remove all of the cards from the outer edge as well as the tape off of the valve stem, and then we are just about finished. So we've just finished our 3rd and final coat of the clear coat, and I can't even believe how good these turned out. At this stage, you're going to want to give the wheels a full 24 hours or longer if you can to cure before you put them back on the car. If you don't, there's a chance that you end up scoring up some of the paint in here when you go to turn the lug nuts back on, and you obviously don't want to screw up your freshly completed paint job. At this stage, you may also notice you could have a little bit of overspray like I screwed up and managed to do here. If this happens, a little bit of paint thinner on a microfiber cloth will take that right off. So once they've fully cured and dried, all you have to do is put your center caps back in if you elected to remove them, and then put the wheels back on the car. You're going to torque your lug nuts in a star pattern if they're a 5 lug, or similarly if it's a 6, just make sure you're doing them across from one another, and you torque them down with a torque wrench to the spec called for on your vehicle, which can simply be found on Google. I think these turned out tremendously well. I've completed it in just under 24 hours. It is just under a day later from the start of this project that I am standing here. And it costed me less than $50 to do. So I hope that this can give you similar results. If you have any questions at all about the process, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will be absolutely sure to respond to you to the best of my ability. Or if you just want to let others know how this worked out for you, leave a comment for that as well, letting us know what your results look like. Otherwise, best of luck, thank you for watching, and have a great day.